Very good afternoon to everybody. Thanks for clicking on to the Tropical Outlook for Saturday, the 22nd of June. Just a little reminder that this is recorded a little bit earlier than Saturday afternoon, so some of the information here may be tweaked slightly between the time of recording and the release of the video. I happen to be away this weekend, so some of these videos are going to be recorded a little bit earlier than usual. The global weather and climate report won't be a live stream tomorrow, but it will be a recorded video, so there will still be content tomorrow, despite the fact that I'm not going to have the live tomorrow as per usual, but back as normal next Sunday. So before we continue with the video, be sure to hit that like button, share with your friends and family, and subscribe. I do greatly appreciate everybody's support ongoing. There is content 7 days a week here on the channel, so there is a lot of work going on in the background to deliver not just UK, Ireland, and European weather, but also a global weather analysis, so to speak, and including the tropics this year as well. Have been doing it in years gone by, but in recent times I've not really been looking at the tropics in a lot of detail. But this year I'm going to try and follow what is likely to be a very, very busy season indeed. So this is the GOES 16 Channel 13 infrared imagery here representing the tropical Atlantic, and you can see here that we do have the typical week at this time of the year, waves that are running from east to west across the tropical Atlantic here, just to the north of the equator. What will happen is, as we move through the month of July and into August, this line of convection here streaming off Africa will be positioned further northwards towards the Cape Verde Islands, and then we will see a lot more in the way of action within the Atlantic basin. At this time of the year, most of your activity is usually within the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, and that has been the case. We actually have seen the development and landfall of the first named storm of the season, which is a tropical storm Alberto, that moved in near Tampico, Mexico. So this general region just here. But what we did see with Alberto was some very, very significant flooding in parts of coastal Texas, some 500 miles to the north of where the center of the circulation was. So we're seeing heavy rainfall spreading across Mexico at the moment. There's a big turnaround now taking place. Remember, back a few weeks ago, we had a lot of drought over the Western Caribbean islands, the Yucatan, Belize, Honduras, Nicaragua, up into Mexico. What has been the case here is we've seen quite a significant change in the pattern, and the reason for that is you can look at the Manjulian oscillation here, which initially seen a lot of sinking motion over Mexico, over Central America, over the Caribbean, and we've had a lot of strong high pressure, no rain to speak about for weeks on end, delivering some very, very extreme uh, conditions in this part of the world. That has changed in the last 10 days or so, thanks to an active phase of the MJO moving into this general area. But not only that, we've seen a significant change in the upper pattern across North America, where we've seen a very strong ridge of high pressure, essentially feeding off the core, the mother high, so to speak, over Mexico, over Central America. That had been then kind of exerting northerly influence up into the western United States, and we've seen countless systems riding over the top of that and down into the eastern side of North America, where we've had quite a lot of troughiness during the month of May. What we've seen taking place in recent times now, I want to kind of explain this real quick because I don't want to make it too long winded. But to try and understand the overall backdrop to this pattern and the evolution of change, is that we're seeing very heavy rainfall thunderstorms over the far eastern side of the Caribbean, where we've seen a lot of flooding in eastern islands regions within the Caribbean. Then we also seen very heavy flooding in Texas, where we had a worsening drought, record breaking heat here. This whole region was experiencing drought and record heat. Now, I think Mexico is likely to have seen its hottest and driest May on record. we are seeing significant changes now taking place in this region here. And we'll look at this in the global weather report in a little bit more detail coming up tomorrow afternoon. But you can see here the bullseye of rising. So greens represent rising air, the oranges represent sinking air within the atmosphere. And we've had this bullseye of moisture, and that has been enhancing the Central American gyre. That is a kind of coming together of winds over a broad scale. So the monsoon trough draped across the northern portions of Central America or South America, extending into Central America. Then what that gyre has been doing, that's kind of a large, broad scale area of low pressure or circulation. What that's been doing is that's been feeding moisture northwards. And the reason why it started to turn north into the western side of the Caribbean, western side of the Gulf of Mexico, and Mexico itself has been that the area of high pressure over the western United States has shifted into the east. That's allowed the counterclockwise circulation to then feed moisture northwards up into Belize, Honduras, Yucatan Peninsula, Mexico itself. Then the development of a system that moves out of the Yucatan Peninsula and into the very warm waters of the Bay of Campeche. So you can see here that we do have, let me just get the right chart, it would certainly help. Bear with me just a wee second here, folks, sorry about this, because it's really quite interesting to see here, like I say, evolution of pattern change. That is something that I have been making mention of quite a bit in recent times with regards to even the changes that we're seeing here in the UK, Ireland, and western areas of Europe here. So we've seen this moisture. We continue to see this at the time of recording. You can see that we've got this blow up of thunderstorms moving in a general north to northwesterly fashion. So just to the west of the Yucatan here, this little bay, so to speak here, hence the name Bay of Campeche, this Alberto moved in over this waters that are around 30 Celsius, and then it moved into Mexico itself, and we've seen, but not only just flooding across Mexico and winds of in excess of around 45 to 50 miles per hour, but we've also seen a lot of weather moving northwards up towards the Texas coast. Even Louisiana was seeing some flooding as well. Now, if we look at Twitter here, I want to show you some of the videos that we've seen out of Texas in recent times with the landfall of Tropical Storm Beryl. Now, this is a tweet here by Sierra Lindsay showing the conditions that we were seeing all the way up in Galveston, over 500 miles north of the center of circulation. This was the scene in Galveston on the Texas coast here just south of Houston. So wet, windy conditions was the result all the way up in the northern Gulf, and this is quite significant flooding here. This is coastal flooding with a storm surge of 2 to 4 feet, and like I want to keep emphasizing, folks, this is about 500 miles north of the circulation center itself as it went in near Tampico in Mexico. Now, what we are likely to see is another system develop, and what that's going to do is going to take almost an identical path to Storm Alberto. If it gets a name, whether it moves into the Bay Campeche, it develops the circulation, it starts to tighten up. It's over very warm waters. Wind shear is generally fairly light. We've also got relatively moist air in place as well. We've had quite a lot of dry air over the northern Gulf in recent times here, but it looks as if we're going to have a semi-conducive environment. So once this mass of moisture here starts to lift back over those warm waters of the Bay of Campeche, we may start to see a weak circulation beginning to develop here, and this will likely be late weekend and into the early portions of the new working week. And you notice here that the GFS average simulated IR brightness temperature shows a bullseye of convection here moving into almost the same location as what we've seen with Storm Alberto. So this would be Beryl if it develops into either a depression or a named storm here, or a storm itself. Sorry. So you can see here that the GFS IR imagery is indicating the potential of a development of Storm Beryl moving onshore. You notice here that it doesn't have just quite as much convection, lifting further northwards up towards Texas, up towards Louisiana, etc., as we've seen with Storm Alberto. So we'll need to keep our eyes closely fixed on this, and then you continue to see lots of moisture, widespread heavy rainfall, thunderstorms, and the reason directly for that is this pulse of MJO over the region, feeding and fueling this moist environment within the tropical regions of the far west Atlantic here. So, like I said, Storm Beryl would be the next on the list. Then it would be Chris. Then it would be Debbie, Ernesto, and Francine, etc., and we are likely to see a significant season this year. I want to also give you a couple of interesting facts here before we look at other things with regards to the first names of the season here, because this is an interesting tweet here. This is by Dr. Phil Klotzbach of Colorado State University, showing Tropical Storm Alberto has formed in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, this is going back a couple of days ago. Alberto is, interesting enough, the latest first named storm since 2014, although still slightly ahead of the long term average of the 20th of June. So, generally, the 20th of June is climatologically the first, the date of which you would get on average the first named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season, but yet it is the latest. Alberto is the latest named storm since all the way back to 2014, which I thought was quite an interesting little fact here, and also an interesting one here by Phil. Through the June 19th, so obviously a few days ago, the Northern Hemisphere has generated a paltry 12 ACE numbers here, accumulated cyclone energy. That's the third lowest through the 19th of June since 1950, trailing 77 with 11 ACE points and 2017 with 9 ACE points. The Northern Hemisphere hurricane and typhoon season has gotten off to a very slow start. I think we're down to about 25% of normal when you include the entire planetary tropical cyclone activity, which is pretty remarkable given how busy the Pacific should be, even with an El Nino or a La Nina year, even with an Atlantic hurricane season that tends to be busier. You get a weaker Atlantic. When the Atlantic's weaker, the Pacific tends to be stronger. When the Pacific is stronger, the Atlantic tends to be weaker. You typically find that is the case, and they quite often coincide with either El Nino, which weakens the Atlantic season usually, and strengthens the Pacific. When you've got a La Nina, you tend to have a busier Atlantic and a slightly quieter Pacific as a result. So looking at the infrared imagery here, this is the Atlantic-wide view. You can see here not a whole lot going on within the main development region of the Pacific. All the activity is, generally speaking, in the Caribbean and moving up into the Gulf of Mexico. And we are likely to see the development of Storm Beryl, possibly a named system, the second of the season, and helped by this MJO pulse. Now, what I do expect to see taking place is our kind of quietening down of the tropics as we move towards the latter half of this month and begin the month of June. You notice here that we are seeing quite a significant change in the upward motion versus a downward motion within the global atmosphere. We've got a congregation of upward motion now starting to show up over the Indian Ocean, the Indian subcontinent here. So we're likely to start to see the Indian monsoon become a little bit more active. It has been quiet up until now. We've still seen ongoing heat across the north of India into Pakistan. This should hopefully start to bring some of the storm clouds further north over the Indian subcontinent, so to start to weaken the heat across the far north of this region. But then in turn, with a pretty strong sinking over the Americas, over the Western Atlantic Basin, I would expect to see less activity over this region as we move out of June and into the month of July. I think that the tropical Atlantic will start to quieten down. I may be wrong, but that is the hunch anyway that I'm going with. And finally, let's look at the National Hurricane Center latest information here. So we've got Invest 92L, which has not been mentioned that much, and I do apologize. I should have mentioned it because that has a 60% chance. Remember, this has been recorded a day before, so this will likely have moved on shore. But the National Hurricane Center had given this disturbance 92L, Invest 92L, a 60% chance of cyclone formation within the next 48 hours. The Southwestern Atlantic updated recent data from the recon. It shows that visible satellite imagery indicate that the area of low pressure located about 120 miles east of Jacksonville, Florida, has developed a well-defined center of circulation and is producing winds near 35 miles per hour, but associated showers and thunderstorms are not quite organized enough for this system to be considered a tropical cyclone. However, only a small increase in organization, a consolidation, a tightening of the circulation would be sufficient for the formation of a short-lived tropical depression before it reaches the coast of northeastern Florida and Georgia tonight. So remember, this is yesterday. This would be I'm talking about here because it's pre-recorded some time before. Not a big fan of that, but I would rather still deliver a video and give you content and have no video for a particular day. So obviously we'll need. It'll be interesting to see what happens with this. Then you've got a 50% chance of cyclone formation with this second disturbance here. At the time of recording, it is over the western side of the Yucatan Peninsula, and this is going to move northwestwards, moving over the Bay of Campeche. Water temperatures at the surface are around 30 Celsius or 86 degrees Fahrenheit. There probably has been a little bit of a removal of the heat content due to the track and movement over this region of preceding storm Alberto, but nonetheless, it is quite possible that this could develop enough of organization over this region to have a name. So you can see here that certainly the GFS model indicates that this could develop enough convection, enough spin within the atmosphere before moving into Mexico. Finally, let's have a quick look at the amount of rain expected within this region in the next wee while or so here. I'm having a hard time trying to find the right map. I don't know why. I had it before the recording and I've lost it. Quite often have a bad habit of shutting down windows, and it is a slightly frustrating thing, I must admit. So let me see if I can pull up the right chart. That would certainly be very helpful indeed. So you can see here that we've still got some very heavy rainfalls. There's the typical monsoon trough over northern South America. And then we've got plenty of moisture up through Central America, Yucatan, and this is the big dramatic change that we have not seen in recent times. This is very, very welcome for drought-stricken Mexico, but you know, as per usual in this region in particular, too much too quick is usually the case. And you can see here by the time we reach all the way out to the end of week one of July here, this is the expected rainfall totals. And you can see a lot of moisture expected over Central America and over a decent swathe of Mexico as well. Looking finally at the CFS V2 for the weeklies, and we can see here this is the mean pressure pattern in the upper levels of the atmosphere here. So you've got plenty of ridging across the top. You've got a slight weakness over Mexico, over Central America due to the convection that we're seeing ongoing here. And let's have a look and see. This is the 7-day precipitation anomaly, and that is certainly welcome news, isn't it? So we're seeing plenty of above average precipitation. You know, obviously too much rain across parts of Central America now. That this is going to become a bigger problem. It's going to go from drought to deluge. but also up across Mexico, we're seeing quite widespread above average precipitation here as well. So, yeah, we'll keep monitoring this situation. I will do a tropical outlook if it is necessary during the upcoming week, next week. And if not, it'll be business as usual. I'll do a tropical outlook next Saturday. Stay tuned for the global weather report tomorrow. And I'll see you tomorrow with more. Bye for now.